What is up, everybody? Welcome back to one of our home team episodes with MDV, Dennis Marshall, and Gabe Yanez. It is officially Tank Top Tuesday. And so if you're watching this, MDV is about to take off his shirt. I don't know what's happening right now.
I was just joking.
But if you're watching this on Spotify or on YouTube, it is officially Tank Top Tuesday. I put a post out, a little story yesterday. And, if you're listening to this show and you're a guy out there and you're like, dude, you know what? I want to look a different way. We have solutions for you. We're going to talk a little bit about that today, but more importantly, man, Tank Top season's coming up. Sun's out, guns out, and we are fired up to record today. We got a lot to talk about, but Gabe, where are we starting? Because I have something I want to discuss, but where do you want to start?
Well, I mean, last time we left off, and I got my dates wrong, so I thought I was going to miss this recording. I'm going to miss the next two, but I know that we were talking about nutrition towards the end, and we kind of ran out of time. I think there's a really interesting conversation to be had there, so I'd love to kind of continue that. More from like a practical perspective of what I think can help people out there. You know, one thing that me and MDV were slacking after the recording ended, and I was giving him a little bit of a hard time, but I just want to clarify that, like, I don't think we disagree about the things that you were saying we disagree about. Like, if anything, I would want to find agreement. I don't think anyone serious on the calories matter, quantity matters, like, hey, let's lead with this like counting macros approach. No one's serious on that side of like this debate, if you want to call it a debate, is saying that, 100 calories of junk impact the body the same way 100 calories of some other food do. I don't think anyone's saying that. I'm definitely not saying that. What I'm saying is that there's a very important part of the equation for people that want to see change in their body composition that comes down to quantity. That doesn't in any means disregard the fact that like food quality matters, that it's incredibly important. It's an incredibly important part of how I approach nutrition. I know Dennis had some really interesting takeaways from the book that he's reading, but I agree with that wholeheartedly. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that I think that for people, counting macros and realizing how much they're eating is an important first step for many, because I think a lot of people are kind of in a place where like, more or less, they know from a food quality perspective what they should be eating more of, what they should be eating less of. And in my experience, I've found that once people start tracking their food, it tends to point them in the direction of making better food quality choices. Because what you start to realize is if you eat junk, it goes right through you. You're hungry almost immediately. And whatever numbers you're trying to hit, whether you're working with a coach, whether you're using an app, whether you just go online and like it spits out macros for you, becomes very difficult if you're eating the wrong foods. So what I've found is that like, hey, you go with this quantity first approach and it leads people to make better food quality decisions. And it's also like a little bit more black and white. What I don't like about just immediately starting people that are like, hey, nothing has worked for me, really want to see a change. Okay, so just eat better foods, eat more whole foods, like eat healthier foods. I think that if you're not very, very hand-holding with that relationship, like if you're not working one-on-one with them, if you're just giving them like passing advice on where to start, they're combating a lot of marketing and really like messy gray areas of what is like healthy food, what is whole foods, that just adds to a lot of conclusions. Like the average person, not us that, have pretty good education on what we're actually looking for. You can go down the aisles of a Whole Foods and there are companies that have spent a lot of money to convince you that, an Oreo is healthy because it comes from this brand and it's gluten-free and it's this and that and it's all that thing. And I know that we know that Oreo isn't any healthier than like the name brand Oreo, but for a lot of people, there's a lot of confusion there. So that's where I think that if you were counting macros, those are probably going to have very similar numbers. So it kind of like incentivizes you to like, not eat them all together. So that's kind of where I fall on it. I think we agree on this stuff more than we disagree. And then the other thing that I really wanted to clarify, because that was part of the conversation we had after we recorded, was I'm also not saying that you should count macros. Like, I always try and preface the fact that like, if what you're doing works, if you're like, hey, I eat meat, seeds, like all whole foods and every single meal, that's what I'm doing. And that works for you. And that doesn't feel like something that's completely unsustainable and you've like managed to make it work. Like by all means, like that is an incredible way to look really good, feel really good, like do it. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is if you're someone that like has felt like they've been spinning their wheels with nutrition and you've done Whole30 and you've done this and you've done that. And you always like, all right, I seem to get some traction, but just completely go back to where I don't want to be afterwards. I think that really learning exactly how much you're eating and playing around with those numbers is a really, really beneficial tool for people. So that's kind of, maybe I just wanted to clarify what I was saying last time before we ended, but I do think that there's a good discussion there.
Sure. Yeah, I think there's a good discussion to be had here for sure. I think my position on this, Gabe, is that I look at this as a systemic problem in the United States of America. I think that this is a wholesale systemic issue that we have dosed ourselves on enough poison. The poison is in the dose argument. We have dosed ourselves on enough poison where we have 75% of the population who are obese or overweight. And whatever the percentage of young people is that is skyrocketing at the same time, and type 2 diabetes is skyrocketing at the same time. And I don't necessarily think that do I think that counting macros is really great for people who want to see body composition changes? Sure. If it works for you, it works for you. It doesn't work for me. I don't like that idea. I think that weighing food before you put it in your body is kind of a strange concept. I think it's strange in a lot of ways. For me personally, I don't like that idea of putting 7 chips on a scale and being like, oh, I can have these 7 chips. It doesn't work for me, nor do I like that concept. But what I'm saying is, at some point, we have reached an inflection point with American nutrition that you can't argue the fact that we are way off track. And I don't think it's let's just measure the amount of Oreos that we're eating is the solution to getting better. I think the solution to getting better is much more deeply rooted in figuring out quality nutrition and why is our food system so mangled and why has our health degraded so fast over the last 30 or 40 years. I mean, you could probably look at the 80s, at the end of the 80s and the early 90s, maybe even a little bit before that, probably the 80s though, the era of greed and mass production of, a ton of food, massive amounts of junk just lining the shelves. Why have we gotten this far to this point? And my whole position on this thing is that I think a lot of it could be solved with better food quality, because I think if you just 1-for-1 swapped, so if you have people going to McDonald's X number of times a week, if you 1-to-1 swap that with high quality, same foods, same quote unquote foods, if you put beef in there, if you put good bread, if you put even potatoes that are fried in air and a nice oil in the air fryer and you fed that to them, I think that they would have different health outcomes. So what is making all of those people fat, sick, and unhealthy? If it's quantity, if it's purely quantity, I think that that's a little misguided based on even just the comparison of those two sets of food. If you place those two exact meals next to each other in the same amount of quantities, what is the difference that's making these people over here sick and these people over here healthy? That's kind of the place that I come from this argument. I'm not an argument, discussion, whatever. I'm not saying that if we have somebody who we're working with who wants to see minimal changes in or they want to see changes in their body composition, of course, I think weighing and measuring can be a valuable tool for that person. But from a systemic point of view, I think we're extremely up the river without a paddle on quality of food in this country. Hugely.
For sure. And for me, it just comes down to all right, what's the practical solution then? What's the practical thing that honestly someone listening here can put into practice that will help them move in the right direction? Because for example, with your example, and even backing out to one thing that you said, I of course it's unnatural to weigh everything before you eat it, but we live in a very unnatural time. The food we have access to is completely unnatural. The way that 100%.
The food that we have access to is completely unnatural.
Completely unnatural.
I don't think that's necessarily the case.
You see what a lot of people have access to. You see what a lot of people, wrong, right, or indifferent, see as the cheaper option when they're, really trying to make ends meet. You see what's pushed to them as quote unquote healthy food. You see many people that have been, convinced that still the old food pyramid is what you should be doing. You see all those things, and it is unnatural. There's been so much done to completely trick all the hormones in our bodies that are supposed to give us a very natural, hey, you are satiated, you should move on from here. It's hacked that completely. So to combat that, I think we need some behaviors that, yes, might be seen as unnatural, but it's because the food environment that we live in has completely changed, with a lot of very smart people that have put foods out there that are highly addictive, that are very highly not satiating. Because to your example, like, why is it that if you take the McDonald's meal and make it, potatoes cooked in beef tallow, like real bread, like real beef, like real cheese, why is it that if you take that meal and compare it to the McDonald's, that those people are going to have different health outcomes? And what I would argue, and I think that there's validity in this that's been demonstrated, is because if you eat that very whole food version of that, it's just going to be more satiating. Like, it's not going to make you crave it again and again.
It's inarguable, though, that's a better option.
No, for sure. But
you can't argue
at the end of the day,
not better.
But at the end of the day, no, I'm not saying. I'm saying it's so much better. But why is it so much better? Why?
Because the other stuff is cooked in shit. It's
for
literally...
sure. But the mechanism that we're all coming down to, like, we're taking two different roads that at the end, like, get us to the same place, which is like people are eating a moderate amount of calories or they're eating a shit ton amount of calories. Because you have the McDonald's meal and then you get home and you're like, man, that, bag of chips in the pantry seems really, really tempting because you had a shitty McDonald's meal. Or you're going to go back to McDonald's tomorrow and the day after that and the day after that, because the combination of fat, salt, sugar, and texture in the McDonald's meal has literally been made by scientists to be incredibly, incredibly like, I need that again. Whereas the whole food version of that is delicious, it's satiating, but it doesn't have that same like hardwire effect, literally from like a neurological perspective, to make you want to get it again.
So I listen, I don't want to dominate this whole podcast with a nutrition talk. I definitely want to get into other more fun and exciting stuff. I think we can watch paint dry.
I think this is incredibly fun and exciting.
Well, yeah, but I don't. I certainly don't. I want to step out of this conversation right away. I just want people to make better decisions for their health. And ultimately, the inputs are going to dictate the outputs. And that's my belief system on this. And I think if you put better food into your cart, more often than not, you're going to have better health outcomes. And I don't think it's an access issue. I think that you can find tremendously high quality food. Is it the highest quality? No, but you can find them at neighborhood Walmarts. You can find them at whatever budget grocery stores. I shop at grocery outlets. Like, I'm not above this stuff. I'm shopping at the cheapest place that you can find food, and I'm finding food that's super high quality. And ultimately, I think that one of the things that you mentioned that I do agree with is that a lot of nutrition is going to come down to, or maintaining a healthy body is come down to your choices and your discipline. Whether or not it's, do I reach for those extra foods after I've already eaten? Do I blow past, the amount of a normal human being would ever need to consume? And I'm just going to keep eating because I'm sad, I'm lonely, I'm, depressed, or I'm thinking about other things. I think a lot of those things matter a whole lot in nutrition. But that's kind of like, I don't really want to continue going down this path. I want to talk about other stuff that's more exciting and fun. But that's my whole... I got
a question on that.
Yeah.
Dennis was talking about his book that he's reading about the calories in, calories out. I was just interested in what you were talking about, because you said something that last podcast where you were like, basically the body adapts to the amount of movement that was incorporated. Can you shine light on that more? Because that was interesting to me. Oh,
yeah, there it is. Yeah. Well, I mean, to speak even more generally, I think, and this is, I kind of I think I agree with Gabe and MDV, even though it seems like they're disagreeing with each other.
We're not disagreeing. I feel like
they're saying the same thing, but just
right, exactly. Yeah. I think ultimately you were kind of landing in the same place. But I actually, just based on my experience, I do kind of lean more towards MDV's philosophy around focusing on quality first, and that sort of takes care of the quantity aspect of food. If you're eating the right foods, you're probably going to end up eating the right amounts of foods as well. But I think it depends largely on the person and the personality and what's going to work for them. I've seen both strategies work for people just as effectively. But here's this kind of gets to your question, Jason. Like what I've always taken issue with the calories in, calories out, just paradigm, I guess, and belief system is like, it makes it sound like it's objectively just two dials that are getting turned, right? It's like you can crank up the amount of energy you expend in order to lose weight, or you can crank down the amount of energy that you intake in order to lose weight. But then when you really look at how it works within the human body, you recognize that there's like literally 75 other dials that are all going to play a role in terms of how much energy you expend throughout the day, as well as how much energy you intake, not just from in terms of like the quantity of food, but how much of that food you're actually absorbing as energy. And so it just seems it's always seemed a little bit misleading to me when people have this like definitive stance on, in order to lose weight, you just need to be in a caloric deficit. You need to expend more energy than you burn. You need to expend more energy than you take in. And it sounds so simple in practice, or at least in theory, but in practice, it's actually incredibly difficult because these are all just estimates anyway, to begin with. Like your body is going to, the amount of energy that we expend, we kind of base it off of what someone's basal metabolic rate would be. And that's just an estimate. You can get it measured very definitively and objectively, but it's almost impossible to do that. So you're estimating that. You're estimating how much energy you're expending through your daily activities. You're estimating how much energy you're expending through exercise. Then you're estimating how many calories are in the foods that you're consuming. And all of these estimates, when you look at it, ultimately it ends up being like you're somewhere in the vicinity probably of like a 30 to 40% margin of error potentially on either side. So to think that it's just like this absolute target that you're aiming for each day, and that's going to lead to X result, whether it's weight gain or weight loss, is just, it's misguided. And I think it's misleading to people. And that's I'm not suggesting that the law of thermodynamics does not apply to people. It absolutely does. In order to lose weight, an organism, a human, an animal has to be in a caloric deficit. I just think it's much more nuanced and involved than like the advocates of that philosophy from a dietary perspective and in practice make it seem to be oftentimes. And I'm not suggesting all of them do that. Like a lot of them offer that a more nuanced explanation of how it actually works. But I've always just taken issue with it because I think that leads to frustration because people, based on their estimates, think they're consuming less food than they're burning, and yet they're not seeing the result that they want. And I say, well, I just need to continue eating less or moving more without considering all the other factors. Like as one example.
Yeah, from the book, right? Because you're talking about, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of answering the question in a roundabout way. I'm not speaking specifically to the book because I haven't finished it yet, but okay. But I mean, in the book, he gives examples of how the body adapts to the amount of activity it engages in, and ultimately seeks homeostasis in terms of how much energy it's going to dedicate to other metabolic processes in the body. So, just the most general example that he provides is that like hunter-gatherer cultures, the people within those cultures that engage in the types of activities that they engage in are burning as many calories per day as a sedentary Western person that's just sitting around engaging in very little activity. And that's just one way in which the body adapts its internal thermostat to maintain homeostasis. And so we think we have like this absolute complete control by turning one dial in terms of how much exercise we engage in. But little do we realize what's actually happening under the hood when we do that is the body is adapting accordingly and just burning less energy, engaging in other activities. So that's just one example of one of the things that he talks about in the book. So again, yes, in order to gain weight, you need to be in a caloric surplus. In order to lose weight, you need to be in a caloric deficit. I just think the conversation is so much more nuanced than a lot of people give credit for.
Yeah, there's so much nuance to all this. One thing that I would say I've seen, at least in my experience, and now I've been super fortunate to start working one-on-one with a lot of guys, and I see this a lot, specifically for people that are later in their kind of like, hey, they've been doing this for a while, like they come from the CrossFit space, like they really understand food quality and been doing this for a good amount of time. Because I agree with you, Den, like it's all an estimate, and there's so much kind of like room for like what's actually in the food label and how much you're burning. First of all, if you're using like what a watch tells you like you burn in a day, like that has been completely proven to be like that number is not even within like,
yeah, it's not even close,
like screaming distance of what you're actually burning. But one thing a lot of people do is the lack of consistency across the week, which I think that just having a grasp on how much you eat helps with that. And that in itself can help significantly for people. And what I mean by that is, people eat clean Monday to Thursday. They do all the things that they're supposed to, and they're significantly underfed for that period. And then the pendulum swings so hard in the other direction, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And they kind of like think that they're like doing pretty well. It's more of this like 80-20. And I'm telling you, like once you actually start putting numbers in and see that like you're at 1,800 4 days a week and you're at 3,000 plus on the weekends. Yes, they're all estimates, but trends are trends. It helps people even that out. And that alone helps with like their energy levels, the performance that they can put out in their workouts. And yes, everything's an estimate, but we're looking more for trends rather than this is the number that you're hitting and it's, accurate to the percentage and like this is how much you're burning. And I think that that's super helpful for people. And the other thing that puts me on kind of like this side of things that I know is, opposite to you guys is I agree that a lot of this comes down to discipline, whether it's the discipline to like make sure that you're logging what you're doing or the discipline of like making the right food choices and making, more impactful food choices. But for me, like I like to approach nutrition myself and with anyone that wants my help with the same exact perspective that we talk about with training. Like what's the least amount of discipline it can take for you to have the biggest impact? Because I've talked to Jason about this. Like I think the analogy I use is we all carry this like bucket of discipline around us in a day and we only have a certain amount. And every time we have to make a decision that like requires a lot of like, I want to do that, but I'm going to do this. Like you have to use that up. And I think that depending on where you are in your life and your circumstances, like new parent, new job, this and that, like you're taking a lot of that discipline out. So if you can find something that works from a nutrition perspective, that is giving you the results you want, both from like a health perspective and body composition perspective, and requires a little bit less of that discipline, I would highly encourage that you go that route. And again, for me and for a lot of people that I work with, the macro perspective seems to do that because there's less white knuckling involved when you have the flexibility to have some of the foods that you genuinely enjoy, to go out with the kids and have the pizza and whatever, because you can kind of work your numbers around that. It's so beneficial. And that's not, wholesale disregarding that food quality matters. It's just, hey, like if you play this game of numbers, you can fit that in and it feels easier, and it feeling easier is going to help people be sustainable. Well,
so I mean, that's subjective though. It feels easier for you and it feels easier for some of the people who you work with. I think that it feels harder for me.
Sure.
It feels much harder. It feels much more white knuckled for me to.
And again, I'm not saying that that's something that you should do. I'm not saying that at all.
I agree 100%.
But I'm saying that for a lot of the people that I think we talk to, I think that.
Well, that's just an assumption. You're just assuming, because we can't make these assumptions. This is where this argument goes off the rails for me.
No, I mean, I'm saying people that we talk to that haven't found something that works. If you haven't found something that works, I would highly recommend counting the quantity of your food and going from there. And I think it'll open your eyes to a lot of things. Yeah. Alcohol being another.
I could say the same thing, Gabe, though. If you haven't found something that works, I would take a hard look at the quality of your nutrition. Hard look.
Sure.
But I think that we're just talking about different perspectives for different people and different things that work for different people. At the end of the day, I think that we agree on a lot of these things. I'm not saying to go out there and just completely drown yourself in an endless amount of high quality foods. You should have some measure of quantity when we're doing this. Of course, it would make no sense. And I think on the other side of the equation, the same is true. You shouldn't just be putting junk on a scale and putting it into your body and expecting to get amazing results. I think you have to have both. My personal preference on this, and I think if I look at this from a systemic perspective, I think there's a major quality issue with nutrition across the board. And I'm hard pressed to understand an argument that doesn't recognize that is a major concern. And we're going down an entirely terrible path without any sort of life vests to save us when we get there. Why are we in such dire straits and a lot of other modern countries in the world are not? What's the difference?
I mean, I think you can make the argument it's food quality and food quantity. So I think you guys are saying the same.
Well, no, I'm just saying that the food quality makes you eat more. Like we have a quality of food here that I think that we overestimate like some impact that these foods have on our body that's other than the very simple explanation of you want to eat more of it. Like that just seems like incredibly simple to me.
I don't know about that.
There's a mix of these ingredients and stuff that like you eat it and you can't stop eating. Like it's meant to hardwire your brain to eat more of it.
Yeah, I understand that aspect.
That is to me at
Dude, I had some CICO chips last night. They were definitely
the grain-free chips.
Dude,
grain-free
those
chips
things were so good.
And this is and that's a really good
Chips
example. That's a really good example.
I ate a tray of lasagna on Sunday, by the way.
Yes. But I think that's a really good example of where maybe people that are at a pretty advanced point in their nutrition can trip on themselves, because Masa is a brand that a lot of the podcasts I listen to tends to sponsor them, and it's this like super like like no seed oils, chips. At the end of the day, they're chips. Like you can overeat those just as easy as you can overeat anything else.
Oh,
at the end of the day,
that whole bag is going down.
Yeah, and you're paying like 10 times as much. It's just I don't know.
Or cauliflower pretzels. So I'm leaving the house for Caden's baseball practice. I'm hella hungry. I'd stacked my food. I was on point yesterday, but I had done a lot of training, and I saw these cauliflower pretzels. Dude, they were terrible, but that's an example of like they make you feel like it's healthy. It's not.
Mm-hmm. No.
Have you guys ever gone to like a King Cullen or an Albertsons or like a normal, like not a Fraser Farms, not a Whole Foods, not like a Sprout? You ever go to a grocery store and just watch what people put on the conveyor belt?
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like that for me is the number one reason why I think that the quality argument is a really hard argument to get off of, is that like anytime I go to one of those grocery stores and I put my food down on the conveyor belt, bar none, the person who's scanning my food will tell me that I'm the healthiest person that they've seen, whether it's all day or all week or whatever. And that is kind of wild to me, because it's not like I'm putting things, it's not like I'm just putting like broccoli and rice and chicken on the conveyor belt. Like it's foods that I think are really great alternatives to some of these other things that are out there. But I don't know if people really know, Gabe, as much as you say they know, that the quality of their food is as bad as it is. That's something to me that I'm not fully convinced about. I'm not fully convinced that people know how bad consuming these foods on a regular basis can be for you.
And here's what I think the quality issue has to be addressed first and foremost, because if you're not eating high quality foods, like, and you're saying this, you've said it several times, Gabe, like you're not gonna eat the appropriate quantities of foods. You're not going to eat the right amount. You're going to eat the right ratios, right? So it's like, and until quality is addressed, quantity is like, it's not even part of the conversation. Because if you're not eating high quality, you're definitely not eating the appropriate quantities of foods either. So again, it's both. But I think it's just a matter of like you consume 95% whole foods probably, so like it's easy for you to have like this 5% wiggle room of like, oh yeah, I'm measuring, and this I have a little room to like throw in a couple of these. But for the average person, like if you're like, all right, so you're going to eat X amount of grams of this, X amount of grams of this many calories, and they're throwing what MDV is just highlighting as far as like what they're purchasing at the grocery store, they're just not going to be able to do it with low quality foods. It's like next to impossible. So
but
again,
that's what I think.
It's both. Again, we're going in circles here, but like, I think that's where, for me, that's why I've always thought to address quality first and foremost before having a conversation around quantity. Because without quality, the quantity discussion is sort of like almost irrelevant.
For sure. I think that I've just had the experience of, it's so much easier to just tell people like, hey, like, look at the back of the label. Now there are apps where you can scan that barcode, put that, like, it's so easy for people now. Like, start there, because it leads to a much easier black and white conversation of like, dude, I'm super hungry and I can't hit these numbers. And it's like, well, great. Like, let's look at your food log. All right, what's going on here? Okay. Like, if we swap this for that and this for that, I promise you will not be as hungry. You'll be able to hit those numbers fine, and we'll be in a good place. So it just kind of like, it gives really good, like, black and white lines to aim for that you have to make those changes. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to kind of like do this thing.
Right.
Whereas with the food quality first, I feel like people are very creative to find ways of like the paleo muffin season is like the best way to explain it, right? It's like food quality, paleo foods, like, okay, good in theory, but you let that kind of rock for a couple months and now everyone's smashing paleo brownies and paleo muffins and paleo whatever. Like people are very good at finding ways of taking what's healthy and finding some way to circumvent it and eat a shit ton of it. So let's address it at the root, which is this is a number that's going to keep you at a healthy weight. You're going to find that number to be much easier to hit. You're not going to be hungry. You're going to feel great if you do whole foods. So we can kind of like get there in a way where there isn't that wiggle room maybe, and it's more black and white. It is the way that I see it, because like the paleo season is the perfect example of that, right? Like makes complete sense. I think people eating paleo would do very, very well and wouldn't gain excess weight, but it's all of a sudden you find these ways to like quote unquote make things paleo that you can eat like a shit ton of. You're just eating like bacon and paleo muffins and gaining a shit ton of weight.
Dude, paleo muffins are disgusting.
Or paleo pancakes. They have paleo pancakes, right?
Dude, when paleo was hot,
Everything.
dude, there were so many people who were just like,
I mean, they have a X everything. Whatever trend is in for nutrition, they have a way to hack it to make your junk food fit into that.
Keto cereal.
For sure.
Yeah.
Dude, I gotta tell you,
keto cereal.
Probably just beef in a bowl.
Why is Liz saying Oscar's music? Oh, I get it. I get it now, Liz. That was good. That was sneaky. All right, moving on. Enough of the
That's good.
Jason, I love it. Let's go. What did you want to talk about to start?
We're done with this conversation for at least a few weeks because Gabe's going to be out of town.
There you go.
I know how fired up you get on nutrition. I have this theory, and I'm curious about it, that if you are a competitive athlete in a sport, this is a legitimate theory. I'm curious your guys' thoughts. Take the sport, name the sport. Football, baseball, you name it. In particular, I'll talk about grappling because it is such a highly dynamic, highly cardiovascular, highly muscle stamina sport. So let's just take wrestling. Super cardio, super muscle stamina. Like, I mean, dude, legs burning tremendously, but you don't get any pure strength. So if you're designing a program for someone who wants to be a competitive wrestler or jiu-jitsu athlete, I think you can make the argument that it's actually better not to have a single body split. So instead of going like upper body, lower body, and then whatever, you could actually make the argument that you should go full body multiple days a week so you don't overly tax a singular system so they can't perform on the mats later. And I'm curious this thought about like, if you overexpose the muscle and you're so drained and you can't perform, it's taking you away from your key element. But if you touch it multiple times a week, maybe that's exactly what it needs.
So what's the theory?
So
that
the theory,
a full body split is best for these kinds of athletes?
The theory would be that, like, let's just say you have a push, a pull, a squat, a hinge, whatever. Let's just say, instead of saying, okay, on Mondays, we are going to work shoulder press, bench press, lateral rate, like a bunch of shoulder generated things. Let's just say it would be, hey, we're going to work the shoulders to 50%. And then we're going to work another muscle group and another muscle group and another muscle group, 50, 50, 50, 50. So you're touching all these different muscle groups. You're creating stimulus, but not so much so they can't go perform their sport. Or do you think you need to go all in to get an adaptation? You see what I'm saying? That's what I'm talking about.
So I think that this is a pretty nuanced conversation.
Very nuanced conversation.
So in season versus out of season.
Big nuance episode.
Yeah, in season versus out of season training, I think is all those questions that I asked for you when an individual was asking for us for a strength program. I need the answers to almost all of those questions to spit out the type of program that we'd want. But in season versus out of season training, I think is completely different. But I think the ultimate thing for anybody who wants to excel at a sport is getting really good at that sport. Like people who wrestle need to wrestle non-stop. If you're not good at wrestling, getting stronger, will it help you marginally? Probably. But you need to work in the sport so much more than you're doing things outside of the sport, in my opinion. And then the athletes who are going to really excel will take whatever their weaknesses are in the sport, whether it's cardiovascular, whether it's strength, whether it's flexibility, whether it's mobility, whether it's timing, coordination, or accuracy, agility, whatever. And they're going to work those things out of the sport. But as like a general thematic, like what type of training would I put an athlete into if I just had like no other information? I think that this is probably getting close to what I would say, but because the whole theory behind like CrossFit's training was that CrossFit is a full body program. CrossFit is a full body strength and conditioning program, and that you have essentially a full body split when it's programmed correctly. You are training the shaft of the spear, for lack of a better term, not the tip of the spear. You're taking the athlete and you're developing the athlete's athletic capacity, not specific capacity. And that's how I would view this kind of conversation. If I had to give one answer about like what would be the best for somebody who's an athlete who wants to train outside of the gym, yeah, I'd put them into some sort of full body split like the TH daily. And say, okay, train like this for 6 weeks and let me see how you feel. Not knowing strengths and weaknesses and all the other stuff. That would be my answer. I don't know if let's get the professor on the mic.
No, yeah, I would agree. I think for anyone other than either like bodybuilders or people very specifically training for hypertrophy exclusively, if you're looking to develop like more general physical qualities, strength, endurance, stamina, and trying to develop them in the context of applying them in an athletic context and like allowing them to actually help develop your athleticism with respect to your sport, then full body training sessions are definitely the way to go. I think that's been pretty well documented, pretty well established, like anecdotally with, if you look at those populations and high level like strength conditioning programs, they're most likely almost all the time going to be doing full body splits. And there might be specific scenarios where an athlete would benefit from gaining weight, putting on muscle, and they need that for whatever particular reason, or if they need to like specialize in developing a specific muscle group. Like if someone's leg stamina is lacking, for example, and it really will benefit them in terms of their performance in their sport, then they might have to like specialize in that in specific training sessions where they just do a lower body day to emphasize that. But I'd say in general, you're going to find that most high level athletes are performing like full body splits almost all the time.
And I think that there's a pretty compelling case then too, right? For hypertrophy, a full body split. I know that,
sure.
Ryan Fisher's a big proponent of it, and he's the one that kind of got me to look into it in depth. And it seems that even for hypertrophy, it all comes down to like how many working sets are you doing in a week per a specific body group, and then whether you do that by having a chest day or whether you spread that through the week. It doesn't seem to be that there's that much of a difference. If anything, there's the argument that you can hit your chest hard every single time if you're never so sore that you can't hit it hard again. Right. There's also the argument that if you're doing like a full-on chest day, at what point are you so central nervous system fatigued that you're not even getting an adaptation junk volume per se. I know that this is a lot of like splitting hairs, but there is a good argument for full body and hypertrophy as well. I just know that like me personally and like what I put into flex, like there's just something about like a chest day that's just so fun. Like it is so fun to like feel like you absolutely exhaust and pump like a specific muscle group. So that's just my preference. Not even like a bro split like they call it, where it's chest and tris and back and bis. I really like upper body push pull, lower body upper body push pull. But there is a good argument for full body and hypertrophy as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's more the question I was asking. Is I was thinking full body hypertrophy multiple days a week, not so much CrossFit, but more like full body hypertrophy versus just exhausting a specific like system because of your ability to then go perform your sport. Like if you go wild on your chest and you get what Gabe's talking about, dude, I get it. Like that's awesome. But are you going to be able to go perform, right? And I think that if you're looking at the combination of what you could get across in a week, I think the full body is going to be a really good way to go for a lot of people. The reason why I'm asking this question is I wanted you guys' feedback because I'm very interested in this subject because I think that there's been many schools of thought, right? You have CrossFit, which is kind of different. Then you have hypertrophy, then there's this full body hypertrophy. And that's the reason why I'm bringing this up. I'm trying to think of like, as an athlete in particular with strength, not endurance, not stamina, what is the best bang for the buck, right? And I think it could be a full body hypertrophy training.
I do think that the one thing I would kind of add to that, Jay, though, is even how we write flex now, whether it's a bro split or push pull split, I don't ever necessarily think, and I don't do jujitsu, so I can't speak to this maybe, but I never feel, unless it's like the first week or you haven't been training this for a while, you should never be so beat up that like it should inhibit you to like do something the other day that isn't exactly what you did. So you wouldn't want to do a chest day and a chest day, but doing a chest day, even if it's like a focused chest day, once you get past like that maybe initial week or 2 weeks, this goes back to something we've talked about in past weeks. Like you shouldn't be so sore and like not able to move that it should have, I would assume, too much of an impact rolling on Tuesday or Wednesday, but I don't know.
But what are the goals of a hypertrophy program?
Get jacked.
What's the goal of a hypertrophy?
Get jacked.
Get jacked.
Gain strength.
Is it athletic potential or is it get jacked?
Jacked.
Get jacked.
Okay. So if I wanted to develop athletic potential, I'd put them into an athletic potential program.
Right.
That would be my 2 cents on this. Like overall, if we're looking at, especially for a sport like jiu-jitsu, which is multi-dynamic, very high pace, slow pace, strength, control, cardio, all these things, I think most athletes in that position, if we didn't know their particular strengths and weaknesses, if I just had to guess, I would say a full body strength and conditioning program would be the best way to go.
Do you need the conditioning? Is there an argument for someone that's grappling 3-4 times a week that
For sure.
kind of serves that?
I think it depends. At that point, you have more information and then you make a decision on strengths and weaknesses. But if I didn't have any information whatsoever, if it was just a completely blind question about what would make this grappler better, I would have to go full body strength and conditioning.
Yeah. I found it really interesting. Yesterday I was at comp class at Coyoteras, and it is just a completely different game. I mean, completely different.
Levels, bro.
But for an hour, these guys, it was, 30 minutes and then an hour of rolling was specific conditioning drills for jiu-jitsu, which I had never really done before for that duration of time. Like basically just like all kinds of like passing the guard over and over and over. 90
top
seconds.
and bottom control drills.
Yeah, boom, 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 boom. But like conditioning. So that was just a different way of kind of ingraining the system. But yeah, the strength is an interesting topic. I just get very excited because I am going to be working with a group of wrestlers, and I'm just trying to think, how do you provide them the best tools to help them get to where they want to be?
I think also part of that conversation has to be the frequency with which they're training.
100%.
And MDV, you kind of talked about this like in season, off season kind of thing. But like, at this point, is there really an off season for athletes? Like, I mean, certainly they're out of season, but like they're still practicing their sport for the most part. And I mean, yeah, certain athletes will differ in terms of how seriously they take their time off. And that can affect how you're going to train in terms of strength and conditioning. But for the most part, you need to find the right balance between prioritizing the skill of the sport and the demands of the sport, and just using the strength and conditioning program to support that. Like you're not going to make or break. It's rare that you're going to make or break high level athletes with their strength and conditioning program. Like they didn't achieve what they've achieved because of that. They've achieved it because of the work they put into their sport, and the strength and conditioning just supports that.
Well, you could break. I mean, this is why in season versus off season is huge. Particularly if you're talking about high school wrestlers, a lot of the variables of when they're competing. That they have a meet on Saturday, or that they have a tournament on Sunday, and you can break somebody with strength and conditioning in season.
That was the wrong phrase to use. You could break somebody.
Well, it brings up a good point about the seasons too. Like I know I can only speak for myself, but like with Caden in baseball, there is no off season right now. It is literally travel ball and little league all year round. And wrestling is the same way. Now, granted, there's probably ebbs and flows.
There's priority competitions though.
That's
throughout,
what it is, right? There's priority competitions in wrestling. So, yeah, it's interesting to see where youth sports will go, because I'm getting a lot of questions about strength conditioning, in particular now that the boys are getting a little bit older. You got 12-year-olds that are kind of interested. And it's like, where does that fit into their overall ecosystem with all the sports year round is something we're discussing. I'll keep sharing it here on the show.
One thing I wanted to share with you guys is a pretty cool story. And ties into the Mets, which is always fun. But do you guys know who NJ Tank is on Instagram? He's a Barstool personality.
The guy, the very overweight guy.
Okay, so yes. So yeah. Frank the Tank, funny story. And Jason, I don't know if you remember, I mentioned this a while back, but he's gone further in this journey. But Frank the Tank went like viral because he has these like crazy rants. He's on the spectrum. So he had this like crazy rant about the New Jersey Transit. Like the train got canceled. He wasn't going to make the opening day. Dave Portnoy saw him, was like, we got to get this guy like to be a personality. And now he's a Barstool personality. He does blogging, does videos, does all this stuff. He's very entertaining. He's a huge Mets fan. But he was almost 400 pounds and had an A1C of 11%, which is like literally like that's you could potentially like
that's like double.
Yeah, it's bad. And one of the other Barstool personalities, who's kind of a fitness guy, got him to just do daily walks. That's it. And it's committed him. He's almost 2 years straight of daily walks. Can't do anything about his diet. They haven't been able to like have him like improve that, unfortunately. But just on these daily walks, and they've been logging this, he's won 2 years. He's lost now. He's knocking on the door of 300 pounds, and he's got his A1C down below 5%. And it's just been this like cool feel good story. But the power of like small habits for some people, I think is pretty cool. And also just this like, it's never too late to turn things around. And just all the improvements on his like mood, his health. Oh, there he goes.
Yeah.
Frank the Tank, man. What a guy. That's been Frank. Like a really cool story to track, because all he's been doing is going on these walks, and it's power of like the simple things. But anyway, he's a crazy like Mets fan, and his rants are really fun to watch, but it's been a cool story.
One thing about the movement, the load that he's moving, right?
Sure.
I mean, he's moving 400 pounds, 300 pounds for an hour. I mean, that's a lot. You know, I'm looking at it for the TH45 challenge, and you got guys who are 300 plus pounds doing 45 burpees. Dude, that's a lot of movement. That's a lot of work. And you know what I mean? Like that.
Yeah, no, for sure. By the way, 45 burpees is like the perfect number. That's like 20
just sucks enough.
20 to 30 would have been like
too easy.
You can do 20 to 30 at any point and just like get down and do it.
Yeah, it's the last 15.
Getting to 45 is just like
it sucks every time.
God damn it.
It's a weird number. It's kind of like right in that sweet spot.
Literally.
What's weird about 45 too is like, well, the fact that it's like 45-day challenge, 45 burpees, and equals 2025 is just
the synchronicity there was cool.
So it's like, it's after you get past 30, especially if you're doing it alone, right? Like it's just kind of like, I do it first thing in the morning.
It's perfect because it could be a warm up. It could be like something you do after your workout. You can just always get it done, and it's not in any way going to impact your training or whatever. But it's definitely enough to just be, God, yeah.
I'm legit winded after it.
For 100%.
Yeah, like I go to just walk away, and I'm like, ooh, I got to take a second here. Gotta like sit down for a second.
Dennis is doing them burpees with the clap behind the head.
Hell yeah! Well, real burpees. I didn't know that I could do up downs.
I mean, I didn't know. I mean, I can't even.
Those are OG CrossFit burpees for sure.
Yeah. Come on.
Man.
You got some burpees.
You know, it's brought up a good example for me though. Is like with Caden, I've encouraged him every day. Be like, bro, just get it done in the morning. And he's like, no. And he's been consistent with it every day. He actually started before the challenge started. And he'll do it like at 8, 9 p.m. after baseball practice, and he just doesn't want to do it in the morning. So it's been a good lesson for me to learn like, hey, he made a commitment, he's sticking with it, and like I just need to shut up, because I keep trying to instill like, dude, you should do it in the morning. You should do it in the morning. He's like, no.
Yeah.
And then, but he still gets it done, you know, because I just assume, hey, it's easier to get it done in the morning. And it's been a good lesson for me to reflect on, like, dude, just because it's easier for me to get done in the morning doesn't mean it's easier for him to get done in the morning, because he's still getting the work done. So I just thought I'd share that with you guys, or anybody who's doing the TH45 and the burpees are easier later in the day or whatever. We want them done in the morning, but as long as you get them done, who cares?
Already seen some people like share, you know, hey, this took me X amount of time when I started, and it's taking me this amount of time now. It's going to be super cool 45 days in to see, you know, how some people are feeling and progressing with that specific thing, not to mention everything else.
Yeah.
100%.
Dude, we did. So I told you this, Gabe, but we did a like a little nutrition program at our gym recently, and I literally just plagiarized Gabe's TH5. Like I just took it, copied and pasted it, and sent it
Put
out
in
to
the
people.
Chat GPT. Hey, can you change my logo on this?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, use my own language here. I mean, we tweaked it a little bit, but the main ingredient of the program was just getting sufficient protein every day. And the results that people got that stuck with it was pretty remarkable. Like just in terms of how they feel, their performance in the gym, their body composition. Like it was like some people like it would happen. It wouldn't happen quickly, but then all of a sudden it happened really quickly. And I would look at people and I'd be like, whoa, you completely changed over the course of, it was 6 weeks. So that's cool. Like, to the point of just these simple things that add up and compile when people are consistent with it, it was pretty remarkable.
It's the beauty of the challenge now too. I mean, I think we would have all agreed to some extent, even though, some of us recognized that was the point, that the habits were like kind of like super simple. It was like, this doesn't seem hard on paper. Like it's like burpees, it's just one meal. Like it's just, but that's the power of it. It's kind of like making it something that seems so obviously I can do this for 45 days. And it's all right. So do it. And you'll see kind of like the power of that. So yeah, it's been cool to watch.
Yeah. I love the simplicity of it. I was never I'm a habit driven type of guy to the nth degree. I'm like the most habit routine driven person you could imagine. So I definitely have room to add things to challenges where it's like, wake up and, write a goal down or whatever, stuff like that. And I think that there's complete validity to it. I think where we really kind of hit the sweet spot on this is like having the very simple lifestyle changes that like, okay, you're going to work out every day and you're going to try and get some movement done earlier in the day, whatever that is. You're going to have 50 grams of protein in your first meal. You're going to cut out alcohol. Those are super powerful lifestyle changes. Adding that 45 burpees a day into this challenge is that thing that really for me is like, this is the choice that everybody who's doing this challenge has to make every day. That's a little bit more difficult than the other three because it sucks to have to do 45 burpees at some point, especially if you're like, I just worked out, I don't want to do these. And it's that switch that you can change in your mind where you go, I'm just going to do them no matter what. And I think that that's hugely powerful for the TH45. And I'm stoked to see what these guys, I mean, we got over 550, close to 600 dudes and mostly dudes, but some strong women in there getting after it for 45 days. It's going to be cool.
The whole conversation kind of reminds me, there's this pretty well-known, or I've seen it a lot, repurposed a lot, clip of Jordan Peterson on one of his earlier Joe Rogan podcasts. And he's talking to Joe about like, and he keeps saying like, you have to aim lower. And Joe asked me like, what do you mean by this? Because a lot of times when people want to make changes and like set goals, it's like, like aim high, right? Like set like a really lofty goal. But the whole point that Jordan was making was that a lot of people, the reason that they can make no progress is they keep building up what it would take to make progress to this thing that's like 10 steps too far from them to take.
For sure.
Also because it's like, it's so embarrassing to admit like what would actually make a positive change given where you're at, which I get, right? Like if your nutrition and your fitness and just where in any aspect of life is so not where you want it to be, that literally just making your bed in the morning would be an improvement. It's almost embarrassing to admit that. So you won't start there, but you have to aim low enough so that you're making positive progress, momentum, and build off of that. I remember the first time I watched that, because it's been years ago that he was on that podcast specifically. It made so much sense and it clicked for me in many ways because I feel like I was someone that for a long time was always like putting, and you've mentioned this before, MDB, a lot of the stuff that I wanted to change like on a pedestal and making it really high and almost making it like too high and too intimidating to even like start, taking steps in that direction. So I know it seems almost counter to be like aim lower with your goals, but I don't know. That's something that all this kind of like reminds me of. You just got to find the thing that's going to have the impact and commit to it, even if it seems like it's not really, this huge undertaking on paper.
Yeah. The consistency of doing the thing, the process of essentially, it's cliche, but falling in love with the process and doing that same thing over and over and over and over again. And one of the more powerful things that was said to me in terms of jiu-jitsu, and I might have mentioned this before on the show, is Phil Schwartz, who was the owner of 10th Planet Portland. He's a multi-level black belt under Eddie Bravo in the 10th Planet system. He told me that the people who get black belts aren't the most talented people. They don't have the best training regimens. They're just the people that keep showing up for years and years and years. That's how you master anything. You just keep showing up and doing the simple basics over and over again. So it's pretty cool. This challenge is really good evidence of that too.
Mm-hmm. When are you getting back on the mats?
Soon. I met a local guy here, this guy Armin, who trained with Eddie for many years down at 10th Planet LA. He lives like a block away. He's got mats in his backyard or on his roof or whatever. We're going to start training.
Perfect, right on his roof. Yeah.
Yeah. Super San Diego. I'm sure he's going to just mangle me, but yeah, it'll be fun. It'll be a good controlled environment to train in for sure.
Yeah, you're right though. The whole idea of the black belt, I mean, now I've been doing jiu-jitsu 8-9 years, and I'm knocking on the door of the black belt, and it just takes a long time. You just got to keep showing up. It's the same thing with any of these habits, right? I mean, consistency really matters, and I'm so grateful for everybody who participated in the TH45 challenge with us. And if you're not on the TrainHart app, it's so funny. There's a guy I message with sometime on social media, and they listen to all the shows, and it took him forever, but now he got on the TH app. And he's like, dude, I don't know why I waited so long to get on the TrainHart app. The community is on fire. It's absolutely incredible. And your programs are really useful, and they get me to where I want to be. And it's like, I mean, I don't know what else to say. It's just like, hey, if you're listening to this podcast and you want phenomenal training programs and a solid community to keep you on track, join the TrainHart app. Make sure to check out the podcast show notes. All right.
We have to go over the challenge.
Oh boy.
MDV, you're up for the challenge this week. I think it was technically my turn, but I'm going to skip my turn and give it to you since I'm not going to be here for 2 weeks. So maybe I can.
I am delinquent on doing the challenge from this week, by the way.
Oh, no.
I'm delinquent. I just remembered.
The challenge is Max. Dude.
Damn.
It was Max kettlebell swings. And
Did you forget 2J?
Yeah, I'm going to have to do it this morning. Oh.
Dude, you guys are...
There's no reminders, bro.
Oh, man. Just me and Den.
When I come up with it, everyone forgets to do it. Yeah.
It's
the,
all
the 35-minute, 800 rep ones you guys don't forget about.
Those were my challenges, so I remember them.
Oh,
There's
man.
cardio crap.
I'll do the kettlebell swings when we get off.
There's got to be a penalty. We got to come up with a penalty for forgetting. There has to definitely be
45 burpees a day
some sort of
for the next 30 days.
Before we share the challenge, though, this was an absolute abomination. I won't make this the challenge because it was that gross. But I've been working with a coach on some endurance stuff, and he had me do this baseline test, and we retested it. The results were pretty cool, but I've never done something this just obnoxious. So 2K row, 2-minute rest, 1K row, 2-minute rest, 500-meter row.
It's pretty bad.
And the gold standard of where you're trying to get to, or what, because what it's testing is your body's ability to like flush out like all the metabolic junk that makes you feel terrible, is a 10% pace improvement from the 2K to the 1K to the 500. So you're not trying to go slower, obviously, you're trying to get just a little faster, even though the distance is halved. And dude, the first time I did it, I rode the 2K in a 6:57, which I was pumped about because we had recently done the challenge and done a 6:58. I had to like do it again. I got like 1 second faster. And then for the 1K, I did a 4 minutes. So you guys can kind of like picture that in your mind, what that looked like. Like I was like struggling for a 2-minute pace. Like there was one point where I had to stop rowing. I just couldn't like row anymore. I had to like take 2 seconds and just like, so it was nasty. But this time around, after we've been training for 6 weeks, some rowing specific stuff, I rowed a 6:53, and then I forget like the actual 1K like final time, but the pace was a 1:49. So significantly better. So really cool stuff.
That's great.
It's kind of one of those things where, and I know we've talked about this in the past, and I just really enjoy this, but like the approach to training has been very, very, like we're like specific paces, specific heart rate zones, very specific, like every time, like everything is like just so like dialed in. I'm like loving it. I'm also loving the learning behind it, like all the stuff, because I'll go into ChatGPT after all these baseline tests or after all the workouts and like ask it to explain to me like the specific energy system that we worked in that, and like what the physiological adaptation is. And it's just so fun. But the one thing that, Dennis, we've talked about this before, when you go from the 2K row, 2 minutes rest, to the 1K row, first of all, during the 2 minutes rest, you feel worse. Like all the pain and even your heart rate and your respiration rate, like continue to increase during the rest. And it's because of the oxygen debt and the acid buildup, like you just get worse. And then it's so interesting that you start the 1K row, and anyone that's done intervals can relate to this. you almost feel better.
Feel better
for
right.
like 20 to 40 seconds. It's the weirdest feeling. Like you're almost like, oh, thank God I'm working again. But it's exactly 20 to 40 seconds and it's like light switch. And then you just go to feeling worse than you did at the end of that break because you're done with the, what is it? The glycogen energy system. You just switch off and you go back into aerobic and but anyway, I've just been really enjoying geeking out and like understanding all this stuff and stuff that I eventually would love to bring to, a hybrid high rocks training type program to the app. So, a big reason that I do this stuff is to like learn and then, hopefully bring it onto the app. So I'm super pumped. But that test, the anxiety I had once I saw we were going to do it again. But anyway, glad it's over, glad it improved. But yeah.
I have anxiety just hearing you talk about it.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It gives me anxiety to hear about
sweating.
I don't like this.
Yeah, the 2K isn't that, the 2K is a 2K all out, sure. But just waiting the 2 minutes to then go into a 1K is, yeah.
You couldn't pay me $1 million to do that right now.
I won't make
just the thought of it.
But let's talk. Well, we're not gonna give our scores then, right? Because these guys have to do it.
No, because then they'll game it. West Coast advantage.
I just want to know less or more than 50.
No, I'm not giving you anything.
I'm not giving you anything.
What I am going to tell you is funny. I watched back the video of it, and there's a number if I'm going by like strict standards, and a number if I'm going by Jason Khalipa standards.
Yeah, at some point the kettlebell gets here, right?
I thought there was my grip that was going to go. It was like my trap, shoulder, and like actually finishing the overhead part.
Yeah,
I could do a lot more if it was eye level.
There's an argument to be made that the kettlebell swing shouldn't really ever go above your eye level. I think that there's a pretty strong argument to be made about that. But
this is the standard. Can you guys see?
Yeah, just how many did you get?
Oh, those look legit.
Those are pretty legit.
A little slow, but
slow.
Oh, the punch in the bell at the top.
Just going along with gravity.
Nice job, Dan.
Okay, based on the movie duration and pace, I think you got about 56. So that's the goal right now.
Not a bad guess. Not a bad guess.
Oh, all right. All right.
So you guys will talk about the kettlebell swing. I'll send Liz my score. She can share it in the group chat next week. And then MDV, you'll be up for what's the week after that?
Yeah. Well, so we got to finish this challenge this week. We have a redo on the kettlebell swing, max reps in whatever time, right?
Just max unbroken reps. Max unbroken reps.
Kettlebell swing.
And
it's meant to be done with the heavier bell,
right?
Yeah, the 70.
32 kilogram all the way overhead.
Mm-hmm. For anybody listening, just use a kettlebell that you can control once it gets above your eye level. Don't try to hero this bell overhead.
Dude. Last 4 reps got sketchy. Last 4 reps got hella sketchy.
It's a heavy weight to be moving from that position all the way overhead for sure.
Yeah. You want to stay locked in on that, man. The kettlebell can be a funny thing. Yeah. I had a 108 I was swinging not that long ago, and I ended up from one side of the garage to the other because I just lost mental focus and just it took me for a ride, man. And I'll never forget that feeling like it's like out of a movie, you know?
So I'd rather it go that way than I've seen the heavy kettlebell go up and over with a 2-hand grip the other way.
Yeah. Then you like a backflip?
Yeah, well, that's no man's land when it's like going this way on you. That's a bad place to be. Bad place to be.
I've never seen that happen.
I've seen it happen. I've seen the belt lose control at the top. Oh man, I have a funny story about spotting people at the gym with the back squat, but we can get into that another day.
Oh man.
I think next week we got to talk about spotting people at the gym in the back squat. There's a lot of ways you could take that. I'm curious. And then I want to talk about my calf cramps in jiu-jitsu. It's a systemic issue. And, or I don't know if systemic is this is strong. It's a consistent issue for me. And I reached out to Nick Bear because I need to tighten up the electrolytes or something because it always happens to me. So I want to report
What positions does it happen? Does it happen no matter what position you're in? It's only when training jiu-jitsu?
Only when I'm training jiu-jitsu, only when I'm like 3 rounds in, dude, my calves just start to cramp. Right. And it's not like you could just be like, oh, I'm going to pause. You're getting your ass handed to you because you can't move. It's just, it's embarrassing. So we're going to fix it. And I'm going to share the story on the podcast. I'm sure if it happens to me, it happens to other people that listen to the show too.
Is there, and Dennis, you might have the answer to this, is that kind of stuff like purely just hydration electrolytes, or is there something about like an actual weakness of that muscle or like some sort of, like, is it the muscle itself or is it just purely hydration?
I think it's multifactorial. Yeah, it's definitely. I think it's less about hydration than people think.
Really,
I think it's been a pretty. I think that's been pretty well debunked that like cramping is just a result of dehydration.
Huh.
And you just need to consume water. It's more like related to electrolyte imbalance, maybe just too much tension on the muscle than it's prepared to handle. Yes, I think there's a lot of reasons why you'd potentially cramp and a lot of different potential solutions.
Yeah.
I don't think it's only as simple as dehydration, though.
It's always my calves, sometimes my feet, and never anything
But cramp
above
is
that.
the worst.
But dude, like
calf raises, get them jacked.
Gi or no gi?
What's that?
Not that it really matters.
Well,
but
in
both?
But
In
yes,
both?
yes, I was doing gi. No gi. But dude, it's just the reason why I'm so like focused on this right now is I don't want to use the word embarrassing, but it definitely inhibits my performance. Dude, when you're down on the ground and you're trying to get somebody off of you and your calf is cramping, it just messes you up. So I got to
can't think about anything else.
No.
Yes, cramps. Yeah.
And you can't tell this guy. I am yet to be able to say to someone, like, if you're really going at it, like, hey man, my calf's cramping, because you can't,
Wait, so what do you do when it happens? Are you tapping at that point or what?
I try and pull the toe towards my, knee and kind of relax the calf. And normally it'll go away after 20 seconds or so, normally.
Both sides cramp?
Typically it's my left, but sometimes my right. And my feet too. The feet are even worse because you can't stand up. You're just cramping.
You sound like you're talking from the bottom position a lot here, right?
Yeah.
So are you someone's in top control and you're in the bottom?
Yeah, so I'm wondering if it's like a blood flow issue because my legs are up, like I'm defending a position. I don't know. I'm gonna do some more research. I'm gonna report back to you guys. It's an issue that is a big enough issue now to me that it's bothering me.
When we did the 10-minute bike test, I was like, I'm gonna get off the saddle and stand up for the full last minute. And I got to the last minute and stood up, and immediately my calf started cramping. I was like, sit back down. I just had to stay seated. But immediately, as soon as I started standing up, my calf started to go. Dude, just the worst feeling. It's the worst feeling.
Today's episode was nutrition focused, along with some strength and conditioning talk. You never know what you're going to get on these episodes, which is why I like them so much. Gentlemen, I appreciate you guys. I appreciate everybody listening. The goal of this show is very, very simple. Very simple. It's to elevate ourselves, to learn, to grow, and to elevate as many other guys and girls in the process. And it's really like, dude, it's a core value of mine to want to share, because what it does, it also levels me up. Every day I hold myself accountable. Anything we share on this podcast, I also want to live it. And then in the byproduct, try and get as many guys along us to move forward. So if you're getting value from this show, go check out all the other episodes with Gabe and I, with guests, the home team episodes, and share the podcast with at least 3 of your friends. Be like, dude, go check this out. It elevates us, but more importantly, it elevates them to take the message to more people. So I appreciate you guys. Share the podcast. Dennis, MDV, Gabe, have an awesome trip, and talk soon.
See ya.